Hallo, Jaap Melissen. We know each other for a long time. Brechtje, first time that I meet you. You are the editor-in-chief of the foreign desk of RTL News in the Netherlands. And we're going to have a short conversation about your work. We already heard from Javier Espinosa that it's difficult right now for news organizations to send people in harm's way. And naturally, the foreign guests will maybe know or not know, you had a cameraman working in the field who got killed. And this was during your tenure as editor working for RTL News. And I was just wondering, Stan Storimans, a household name in the Netherlands, what happened to your work and to you personally when this happened?
Yeah, I must say this summer I remembered it very well because I was on the spot where Stan died for the first time in Gori in Georgia on a holiday. And I was there looking and I could still see the bullet holes. And I talked to people and some could still remember it, but other ones were like, I don't remember who this is. And I really realized that for the Georgian history, it was just a footnote. But for us, for RTL News, it was the blackest day of our lives. And everybody who worked there, knew Stan very well. He was, from some of us, his best friend, a good colleague. So it really touches us, and it changed the way we work, because we really started working differently, I think.
How did you work differently? Because Stan Storimans, I knew him as well. He was a very seasoned cameraman. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah, he absolutely knew what he was doing. They weren't reporting on the front line. We never do frontline journalism, actually, because we are a small, medium-sized news organization. We don't think we can afford to do that, because then you really need, like CNN style, lots of people involved.
And you found out the hard way that this is not at all a guarantee for the livelihood
Absolutely,
of
because they were 20 kilometers away from the front line in Gori when a Russian and a Russian drone cluster bomb fell on a deserted city where we were doing a report on people that stayed behind, the elderly and some people that couldn't get away.
Yeah.
But we reviewed our policy on. We sent everybody on the course, the field course for in München. It's a hostile environment training. Nobody who works for us goes to places that are conflict places without having done such a course. And yeah, we did a lot of. We spent more time in assessing the risk.
Yes.
So you know where you go.
You know everything about the risk because you have been working for years in conflict zones. And
just back from the Mosul area.
Yes. Yeah. And also you knew the photographer mentioned earlier as well, Jeroen Oerlemans, very well. Yeah. And I interviewed him once after he was kidnapped in Syria, and in that interview he said, well, the risk is too high. I think I have to stop doing this kind of work. Were you surprised that he traveled to Libya again, to one of the most dangerous areas?
I met him just before the summer, and then that was after his, like, we can now say his interbellum or something like. He was like, I want to go to a war zone, a real war zone again. And then he was planning to go to Libya, because then it was his first trip to Libya with the Volkskrant. So I was not really surprised that he wanted to go again, because once you've tasted it, probably as a war reporter, you want to go back.
It's an addiction as well.
Well, I don't know if it's an addiction, but you feel if you have done good work in a war zone and you have achieved what you wanted to achieve, and you feel at home there in a way, then it's probably the place that you should go back to.
Yes.
It's your work, it's your job.
I know you as a very calm, cool, and collected war reporter, even though there are millions of problems that you can have. Even the people who are staying at home at the foreign desk sometimes have criticized you because you took too many risks.
That's what they thought. Yes. And of course, people at the desk don't know about the risks at where I work.
So that's then the question to you. How do you, from an office in Hilversum, assess the risks that your people in the field are facing?
Before somebody goes, you talk to everybody who has been there. I ask the correspondent to do so, and I do it myself. For instance, last summer we had a proposal on going to Libya, but we decided not to because we found it too too complicated, too dangerous. But we did go to Mosul, so our correspondent was just a couple of weeks ago in Baghdad, and he went not to the front line, but from some distance.
What happens if a young reporter who's just starting out and is a freelancer offers you a great story from a war zone? Would you
We
take
never
it?
take pictures,
No, even though the story is great?
stories from freelance. We once did from Jaap, but that's also because I knew him, I knew the way he worked. But we only work with our own staff.
Yeah, that was in Georgia, I think. When Stan died, I filled in more or less because your reporter also went out. Then, of course.
Yeah.
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 Do you meet many young journalists, Hans-Jaap, who for them this is the starting point of a great career? Take a big risk, but then the reward, if you do right, is very high.
Well, especially since the beginning of what we then called the Arab Spring, but probably Arab revolutions, misery and whatever. But you saw a lot of young photographers coming. I think also social media changed a lot. So you could, like 10, 15 years ago, you went and you had no employer. You just were in the dark.
Yeah.
And now you can go for your own Twitter account, at least, and make yourself known that you're there. So that attracts more people, I think, to this job. I've seen a lot of crazy people coming, really, really mentally ill people also coming.
With what idea are they going to a war
Well,
zone?
mentally ill people and their ideas. I mean, that's hard to.
Yeah.
No, really. We saw a few German photographer who killed himself after the trip. There was this Korean. Well, he had a Korean background, I guess, but American guy who was just released 6 months ago from an Assad prison, but we saw him in Libya, and he had many mental issues. And that's like 1% of what goes there, of course. But I saw like more people coming and trying in a way, because you had your outlet already, like on Facebook, on Twitter. You can make yourself known. You can show your pictures already, and you hope that you were discovered.
Yes.
And I can understand that it's hard for, like, if you're at a desk, that you see all this stuff coming from people that you don't know, to make a decision if this is somebody who's like normal and seriously busy in his job, or is he a nutcase?
You are very careful, as you just told us.
Yeah.
So you have to do the course, you have to be trained in order to get into a war zone. And then not on the front line, never, because you say our operation is too small. Still, if somebody of your crew is working there, what does it mean for you actually? Because I imagine that it's more difficult for the people who stay at home than for the people who are in the field.
I know, I always really sleep light when somebody's in this place. A couple of weeks ago when Olaf was in Baghdad and
Olaf Koens.
Yeah, Olaf Koens, our correspondent, and went towards Mosul. Yeah, I mean, what is good, because in the beginning when he started working was still young and very and not so careful, but we have really good we just talk about things, and we decided, you know, he knows when he has to call me, he knows when he has to ask, you know, to just say what we're doing. But I always trust him on the field.
Right.
He's the expert. I don't know
And
anything
then
here.
still things can go wrong, of course.
And then
I
things
think you have to accept that.
Because he called me, and he was in some, it was still 20 kilometers away from the front, 60 kilometers from Mosul, and there was an ISIS suicide squad coming towards them.
Yes. And the one of the questions raised today is about impunity. Now, the people who killed Stan Storimans, they're still out there. There's no trial, no nothing. Are you cynical about the possibilities of getting to the people who target journalists?
I'm sane, but I don't allow myself to be cynical. So I really think we should keep persevering and trying, because there was a report. The Dutch government investigated the case, the death of Stan Storimans, immediately afterwards. There was a clear, there was a weapon found. We know who did it. It was the Russians. They denied. Later they said we're going to investigate ourselves because the Dutch investigation wasn't good enough. And finally they said no, for us the book is closed. So now Jeroen Akkermans is the reporter who got wounded there but survived. And the wife of Stan and the Georgian civilians who died in the same attack. They took it to the High Court in Strasbourg, the Human Rights Court. So we're waiting in line. You have to wait for years before they.
Before anything happens.
Yeah, because there's a lack of judges, but that's the only thing you can do. You cannot. I mean, the truth. We are journalists, so we want to protect the truth, and we owe it to Stan and his family to keep trying.
Rightly so. Thank you both so much for your time today. Yeah.